The Battle of Bunbury was the sizzle without the sausage, the popcorn without the pop, the birthday cake without the candles. The Southwest City was not to blame. Hands Oval was in Schmicknick and catered for its biggest ever crowd, 12,715 fans, without any major hitches. Yes, Bun Vegas sparkled. Even the weather gods shined down on the action. But West Coast and North Melbourne did not read the script, producing a scrappy slog for 3.5 quarters before a finale that at least got the heart racing. The Eagles had 22 more inside 50s but recorded a scoring inaccuracy of 24%, their second lowest in 15 years. This was a game that will not jump off the DVD shelves, perhaps befitting the two teams ranked 17th and 18th on the ladder. The question is, would this city be capable of hosting a third WA AFL team full-time? That and other questions will be answered in this episode of the West Sport Show. We are brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. I am joined, as always, on a Tuesday by the West Australians, Craig O'Donoghue. Cod, how you going?
Oh, I'm good. The voice isn't that great still after screaming at the Socceroos the other night when that goal went through. So I'm still a little bit husky in that way, but other than that, I'm really good.
What a day. What a night for Western Australian sport, and pretty dour affair for 90 plus
It was a
minutes.
horrible game. Yeah. It was a horrible game, but it is funny. I said to my son at 3 o'clock in the morning when the last World Cup final was being played, he asked if we could stay up and watch, and he turned to me halfway through and he went, "Dad, the next one's in America. Can we go? And it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You just go, yeah, no worries." Yeah. As the goal scored, he stood up on the chair and he screamed, "We're going to America!" I thought, yep, he's remembered.
So you are?
Oh, we'll try to, but who knows?
Now
it's expensive.
You've come a few topics to cover today. You've come armed with a thick wad of paper. It's like the George Costanza thing. You know, whenever he wanted to look busy, he'd walk around with a thick wad of paper.
Yes, but this is a big thick wad of paper, which is really significant.
So tell us, this is a story you've broken today. It's a really good story, Cod, about an in-season tournament that involves, it's a pretty funky idea. It's from the Gold Coast's CEO, Mark Evans, and it could involve our two WA teams, AFL teams, getting more home games.
Yeah, so I sat down with Mark up on the Gold Coast when the Dockers were up there, and I said to him, what are your thoughts on the travel inequity? You've worked at Melbourne, you've worked at Hawthorn, you've worked at the AFL, and you've worked on the Gold Coast. So you're extremely experienced. And he gave me this document, if you're looking on YouTube, which is something that he's been working on for a fair amount of time. It's the analysis of competitive balance in the AFL. And what he said is that it's clear that regardless of what's happening with North Melbourne coming over here this year and playing 2 home games, that doesn't really help Fremantle and West Coast all that much. It doesn't really help Gold Coast and Brisbane or Sydney and GWS, whereas Gather Round helps Adelaide and Port Adelaide. And he said there needs to be a way to increase the number of times Victorian teams travel as opposed to saying, oh, let's try to reduce the amount of time that the other teams travel. It's got to be an increase. And he said North Melbourne coming here doesn't make Collingwood travel more or Carlton travel more or Essendon travel more. And you've got to find ways to make them travel more to make the competition fairer. So as an example, Collingwood have only travelled to Perth twice in the same season, once in the last 25 years outside of COVID, whereas Fremantle and West Coast go to
Collingwood have only travelled twice to WA.
Have only played West Coast and Fremantle in the same season in Perth once over 25 years, excluding the COVID years when everyone had to spend time here. Yeah. So whereas West Coast have been to Queensland and New South Wales 5 times, Fremantle have been to Queensland and New South Wales twice, 6 times and stuff like that. So he's saying we need to bring the game to the states where teams travel rather than trying to find other ways around.
So
his concept is let's have 3 tournaments, one in Queensland, one in Sydney or Darwin, one in Perth.
Concurrently?
Okay. At the exact same time. And you have 6 teams basically. So say Fremantle, West Coast, Carlton, Collingwood, Essendon, Richmond as an example. There's 6 teams. And they'll play each other multiple times over
what sort of a period?
Over a couple of weeks.
Okay.
He's saying around round 17 of the year after everyone's played each other once. So you could use potentially round 17 as an opening game of an in-season tournament. So it becomes 3 matches. And then that starts the in-season tournament around the country, and then you have the other games in these locations. You play for money and you play for a cup. So at the end of it, you play 3 games. You've played 3 games. I'm saying you could name them after different rates
in those states,
from those states. And so you'll have 3 games. If it's tied for the number of wins, you have percentage. And at the end of that, you're up to round 19 of the season. You had this massive event, and teams that might not be in contention for winning a flag will have the chance to play for something. It gives us another event, which the league loves events. More importantly, it reduces the amount of time that Fremantle and West Coast would have to travel, and it increases the amount of time that the other teams would have to travel, because it's another 2 weeks at home in their own beds. Meanwhile, Collingwood is on the road a bit more. Essendon's on the road a bit more because they don't spend much time on the road. Fremantle and West Coast travel for 100,000 kilometres this season. The 10 Victorian clubs combined travel for 170,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
So you've got to get them on the road more, and that's what this will do.
And so this will be in the non-Victorian states. So it could be WA, South Australia, Queensland, Northern Territory. Would they mix it up a bit?
So he's saying that South Australia got gather round.
Okay, so you exclude.
You
South
don't include there, but you would include Queensland. You could include Darwin when Tassie comes in. If Tassie comes in the way it's going at the moment, you can include Tasmania. But the point being that you need to give West Coast and Fremantle, who travel the most,
so they'll get it every year.
Over here.
So there'd be one every year here.
You lock it in over here because that protects them from more travel, and you make the Victorian teams travel because then it increases their travel, and that's how you even it up. Not by taking kilometres away from Fremantle and West Coast, it's by adding more kilometres to everybody else.
So I'll put the devil's advocate on my shoulder now. I can foresee a rant and rave from your Collingwoods, your Geelongs, your Hawthorns, your Richmonds. They're not going to agree to this.
Well, if there's more money involved, then people will agree to anything. He's not saying take away your home and away games. So your fans aren't going to miss out on anything. He's saying add rounds to the fixture, which we know is problematic in terms of getting access to stadiums and things like that. But if you're adding games to the fixture, and no one's complaining about gather round because there's more money involved.
So we're saying it's going to be a longer season yet.
It would be a longer season because once Tasmania come in, it's going to be a longer season anyway. And if a 20th team comes in, it's going to be a longer season anyway. And I think what we will see is, when you look at the event rounds of footy that the AFL has, opening round. Round 1 is an event in itself. They try to make it the biggest round of the year. Then gather round is in round 5, Easter round 6, Anzac Day round 7, Indigenous round over 10 and 11, and the big freeze was just in round 13. Now we're at the bye, so there's no big event game or event round or themed round for the rest of the season. So if you chuck this in over round 17, 18, 19, suddenly you've got another event that coincides with the school holidays in July as well. So you say to all those Victorian families, get on a plane, go to Queensland. Get on a plane, go to Perth. It's warmer. Have fun over there. Watch some extra footy.
Well, the WA government's not going to complain.
It makes sense that you can do this. We've seen the success of the NBA in-season tournament. We've seen how Ange Postecoglou might have got the arse over at Tottenham at the moment, but they were playing for a cup that wasn't the Premier League, and the FA Cup is there as well.
Year, Cod. Yeah.
So I just think this idea, it's left field, but I can see benefits from it in so many ways. It fixes one of the travel problems. It gives the AFL another event, gives teams more to play for, gives a school holiday event for people to go to. It ticks a lot of boxes.
Just segueing from that, so this would be different. So North Melbourne, so at the end of its 3-year cycle of selling 2 home games per year to Western Australia, this would be in addition to that.
Well, we don't even know if that 3-year cycle will continue, do we? So that would be something that I'd have to look at. But I don't think the two of them are connected, because what Fremantle is saying is and West Coast as well, we don't want to lose that extra game. They want to add to it on top of it. They're looking for more games. So I think even if it was North Melbourne that came, or if it wasn't North Melbourne that came, might be another club that accepted that money from the government and from the clubs here. I think this could still work, because then you're looking at around 13 and 14, early June, and then you have the July element of it as well. That would give Fremantle and West Coast a real opportunity to freshen up in the middle of the year for when they've got to do their big travels. Because when you look at everything that they go through, when Fremantle played GWS recently, that was a mid-afternoon game over there. They got home at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's landing 1:30 in the morning. Then they've got to get home afterwards. So it's those things that take the
this
real
little period,
toll on players.
This period is so important for them. The bye week, being in your own bed basically for a month.
They lose training time when they're in the air.
Yeah.
You got to be at the airport an hour before. Then it's a 4-hour flight.
Recovery time too from injuries.
Your bags.
Yeah.
You get on the bus. Then it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was midday when they left Perth for the Gold Coast. They got to the hotel at 8 p.m. So it's a whole day gone. So and that just builds up and builds up and builds up over a season. So I think it's a really interesting thought by Mark Evans. The document that it's got has so much information in there. He's gone and looked at 15 categories to assess from the draft to trade and free agency and the grand final at the MCG and travel, all marquee games, second-tier leagues, all these sorts of things. And he said out of those 15 categories he's looked at, Victorian clubs have a clear advantage in 9. So how do you find more advantages for the non-Victorian teams? And this is one of them.
So we've just had North Melbourne's game in Bunbury. Bunbury put on a great show, or Bun Vegas, let's call it. Beautiful day. The weather gods smiled on the game. The ground was in immaculate condition. You and I were there, Craig. We saw it. I think they did a pretty good job at Hands Oval in catering for the 12,700 fans who were there, which was a record crowd for there. I think the teething problems they had in the pre-season, they had a look at those, and I think they put on a good show. Teams forgot to. It was a shocking game for 3.5 quarters. Horrible game. 22 more inside 50s for West Coast and didn't win the game. So it wasn't a great spectacle. A bit of a heart stopper at the finish. So that was something. But Bunbury itself, the takeaway from me, Cod, was that I think they could do this every year if North chose to continue with this deal. I think they could do it every year. But I walked away thinking I'm not sure if Bunbury can host an AFL team full time.
So you spoke to a lot of people while you were down there. What was the feedback you were getting from
So
people
locals were really concerned that it would be the death of the Southwest Football League, which I think would be a real shame. Because for South Bunbury, for example, who that's Hands Oval's their home ground, they'd be kicked out. So that would be the AFL venue. So where do they go? They can't. So it's all those sorts of problems. Like, I think that the administration, they've lost money during this period because they haven't been on the ground for about 4 weeks. Just staggering
to think about that they've lost. They've
been on the ground for 4 weeks. So, they haven't been able to train on, they haven't been able to play. They've lost 2 home games, all the bar revenue, all the catering revenue. It's not there. So there are those issues. But I think it's great to have a game a year there. But I'm just not sure if the local economy and the wider economy is ready for 3 teams. We know West Coast are against a 3rd team, obviously. We know Freo are. And we know the West Australian, WA Football, formerly the West Australian Football Commission, is against it. So it's not going to happen anytime soon, a 3rd WA AFL team. I just don't think Bunbury's the answer.
Is there pressure now, do you feel, after how bad the game was and how windy it was during the pre-season? So Oscar Allen said to me, ground level, it felt like there was no breeze. And the moment the ball got in the air as a key forward, he said judging the ball was impossible and kicking goals was really difficult because of the way that the difference at ground level compared to when the ball was kicked high in the air. So it's an interesting bit of feedback from a key forward who's used to playing in different conditions. So do you worry that the exposed nature of the field and the fact that both games have been impacted by the weather in that way, one obviously and one not so obviously, will be detrimental to the way football is seen there into the future over the next 3 years?
Well, can you look at other venues perhaps? Nothing, again, I was really, they did put on a good show. They did their best. It was really good, well done, Bunbury, but maybe they do. Well, I think you'd need to look at next year. Obviously, you had a pre-season game that was affected by the wind. 15 of 20 goals kicked at one end. The Southwest Footy League numbers are the same. And we've heard from Oscar Allen that the wind affected them at the weekend. It was interesting because from where I sat, I didn't notice any wind, and I looked at the canopy, and there was not really any significant movement in the canopy, but clearly there was. I think there are parts of it, there are wind tunnels. I think that's what Oscar's probably talking about.
Yeah, and the thing that shocked me in hindsight is that West Coast didn't spend the week down there training. I would have thought, getting down, the ground was massive. The gap between the 50-metre line and the centre square.
So officially 170 metres long, but I'm not sure that's right.
It was enormous.
Yeah, it's long.
So suddenly you've got midfielders picking the ball up on the wings and using the paint markings on the ground that you see for all the signage. That's normally used as a reference point, and the players inside 50 use the 50-metre arc and the goal square as reference points as well. When there's an extra 10 metres between you when you're standing on your normal reference points, suddenly the ball's landing in the wrong spot. You're kicking from wider spots on the ground. You're kicking from further out. I can't believe, looking back, that they didn't train there to make sure that they were prepared.
I agree with that. It is surprising because North trained on the ground.
Yeah, well, I think they had one session. You got to go to the ground and have a good look. It's a couple of hours drive, yes, but 4 points is on the line.
Yeah.
I got to give a shout out to the 4 or 5 blokes who were sitting on the bus stop during the first quarter.
Got moved late.
Got moved at quarter time by the police and came back. Came back an hour or so later to watch the rest of the game once they realised
They didn't get moved again?
No,
Ingenuity, Craig. That's what it is.
It was very clever by them to make sure that they were looking around the entire time. It was the same guys who went back there, so I was very proud of them to see that they came back. They tried to ignore the police at first, but were told, no, you must get down. And I did think it was funny post-game that Noah Long came out of the West Coast rooms to do some training on the field, and he'd run about 15 metres when the second siren rang to let everyone else run out into the ground. He's like, well, that's the end of my training session. And he ran 25 metres. So there were some funny elements around the entire thing. I thought, and even the goal umpire's coach who was sitting with us had to sit on 3 chairs to be able to see over the top of the wall that was nearby so that he could see the goal down the other end also. So there were some little different things around the game that just reminded you that you weren't in a normal AFL venue.
But they certainly looked after us. We had good position in the media. We were well catered for, so I have no complaints. It's great being a part of history, I think. It's the sort of games you don't want to miss. I was at the first Western Derby. I wasn't at the first Eagles game, but I was at the first Eagles flag. And games like that you don't want to miss. And, and it showcases Bunbury, and it showcases the government loves it because it shows you that you can fly to Busselton from the east and land there and you come. So I think it's a win-win. I'm just the venue itself. I mean, perhaps we can share it around a bit.
Yeah, and that they can learn from it as well. Where you put grandstands and things like that can maybe shelter different parts of the ground. The people turned up. That's the most important thing. People turned up, and 12,500 is a bloody good crowd for a non-AFL venue when you look at it compared to Canberra and Tassie. And even when you go to GWS and Darwin and Gold Coast, like they're not footy markets normally. So to get 12,500 people there, I think is a real positive. And those fans have shown what it means to them to have the ability to go and watch that game. And if they continue to turn up, that will put the pressure on to make sure that it does stay there.
Now, it's a great segue because we've got the marked for phase 2 of the experiment this weekend at Optus Stadium. Ticket sales, we're tracking on about 30,000, and Freo bought this game, okay? So they've had to invest in this game. But 30,000 is not going to cut it. They want 34 to 38, maybe 40 if they can, to make this worthwhile for Fremantle. So if you're a Fremantle supporter and you really want to help your team, you buy a seat, you get your family in, you watch this week's game. You can go on Ticketmaster and get your tickets. I think at $35. I think
35 is the cheapest ones. Yeah,
for an adult ticket.
Some of them go up to 80 odd.
Quite affordable.
$35.
I mean, and I know it's another game onto your membership. It's not included in your membership package, but there are so many reasons why. If you are a Fremantle fan, you want to keep this alleviating this travel burden, get an extra home game, show up. Otherwise, it's not going to last.
Yeah, and they're showing up to make sure that it does continue is so important. 40,000 is about the crowd. I think it's 40,500 is the best crowd they've ever had against North Melbourne.
Yep.
So getting 35 is going to be challenging in that way. But yeah, the thing that I'm not sure all Fremantle fans realise yet is the government are paying North Melbourne to play in Bunbury. It's Fremantle and West Coast who are paying North Melbourne to play at Optus Stadium, and Fremantle they're going to have them twice out of these 3 years. So the Fremantle are paying them this time, and they'll pay them in another 2 years as well, whereas next year Fremantle will play in Bunbury, and they'll be the government.
So Fremantle go Bunbury once, get
so this
Optus
money,
right.
So North Melbourne are being paid out of Fremantle's coffers. So that's really important to go back to your club and say, well, we have to help the club to make up that money. But it's also important because if it doesn't go the right way, then you do lose this extra game. And we all understand it's expensive. Life's expensive at the moment when you look at it. Socceroos played here on June 5. The State of Origin is on June 18. Katy Perry's here on the 22nd and 23rd. The Rugby Union's on the 28th. I'm not going to Katy Perry. Okay. Went to the Socceroos. I'm not going to any of the other ones. I wouldn't mind going to Katy Perry. Ashes tickets went on sale recently. WWE is coming. Fremantle fans are thinking finals already as well. So money is not easy to come by. But if you can afford to even go, and if you're not about sitting in the top deck, but the $35 is worth just helping your family, worth helping your club to get there by paying for those seats. Even if you're not happy about sitting up so high, if that's all you want to be able to spend, it's worth still going to make sure that you can help your club out in this situation because you want to win a flag and this will help you to challenge for a flag.
So what's your overall view? I'll give you my 2 bobs worth, your overall view in selling home games. So we saw it with Gold Coast a few years ago, sold a game to Freo over here. I'm okay with it. I think I'd rather clubs generate their own revenue than just take off the AFL all the time. These clubs down who are assisted clubs. I'm okay with it if you're down that bottom end of the ladder. I think it's a bit more questionable when you're fighting for a spot in the 8. Team like Melbourne selling those games to Alice Springs, for example, and they haven't been winning there in recent. I don't think they've lost their last 3.
The last 3, yeah.
So that's when I think you're really hurting yourselves with this. Is it worthwhile? I'm not sure in that instance, but I totally get why North Melbourne would do it now. When I'd question it is if North, with a young emerging list, they could be a contender in 4 or 5 years. If they are, then I would question the merit of selling a home game.
Yeah, if you're gonna sell home games, you need to do what Hawthorn have done and play
where it's been very
multiple
successful,
games, and you're there all the time.
Yeah.
And it became a fortress for Hawthorn, didn't it? Like they never lost down there.
But that's when it becomes a win.
Yeah,
but
if you're going to play one game in Bunbury each year, you're not going to understand the ground all that well. Melbourne going up to Alice Springs, it's a lottery about what the weather forecast is going to be there, whether it's going to be windy, which direction it's going to go. Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be wet? All that sort of stuff. So I don't think if you believe you're a genuine finals contender, it's a risk to give up a home game. North Melbourne, this is a no-brainer. Take the $2.5 million a year that it works out to, I think it is, and you're a bottom 6 team. Thanks for the cash. If they lose, they lose. I don't think it really matters in that case because they win on the balance sheet and that helps them to pay their players, their coaches, get better facilities and all that sort of stuff. You would have loved the Hawthorn deal, though, where you get lots of
it's been very successful for Hawthorn, and it was all about getting rid of pokies and needing to fill a void, and they've done it really well. And there's even talk, I don't think it would happen, should Tasmania come in, and it's by no means a certainty at this point, should Tasmania come in, there's even talk about Hawthorn maintaining some sort of a relationship there. I don't think that would happen. But it's been that successful and will become an issue for Hawthorn when they can no longer play there because it's been a real cash generator for them.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of West Coast down there, like 63 inside 50s, we haven't seen that sort of a number getting the ball forward. Like they couldn't kick goals, unfortunately. Did you like the fact that we're seeing some signs now they're able to fix their problems of not being able to get the ball forward?
I think the fact that they had 22 more inside 50s tells you they're heading in the right direction. I spoke to Liam Baker about it before. I was just at his press conference, and he said that, that's right. He said, but you got to, obviously, we kicked a lot of points. So they're going to kick out and we're going to return back inside 50. So that sort of explained a bit of the anomaly. But I do like the direction they're heading in. We're certainly not seeing the big floggings. I think I was watching the game. We were 18 minutes into that last quarter. They were ahead. And I was looking around and I was looking at the North Melbourne players out there and I was thinking, how are you behind? Because there's a lot of talent out there.
Yeah. Despite the inside 50 count being so in balance, like it was 24 to 42 in clearances for the day.
Well, so on the back of Tristan Cherry.
North Melbourne did so pleased there. Yeah. So that's a problem that West Coast need to alleviate because they've got a lot of young guys in there. And it'll be interesting this week, I think, because West Coast have fallen away in last quarters for the past few weeks. And over the last 3 games, they've been down 40 to 102 in final quarters. They're playing Carlton this week, who also can't win last quarter.
And have just touched, but they've been touching them up in recent years, Carlton.
Yeah, so 40 to 102 for West Coast in last quarters. It's 49 to 87 for Carlton in last quarter. So whoever is leading at 3/4 time wins this game and they can just go home. They can just go home because neither team can figure out what to do in the last quarter.
Couple of takeaways from the round. So King's birthday Monday, just an epic game. Well done, Melbourne. Almost got the job done. Collingwood by a point. What did you make of the Steve May, Max Gawn verbal after the siren?
So you don't believe anything that people say about what was allegedly said on the field and not because they're never going to tell the truth at this point.
Well, Max Gawn says, I was too loud.
Yeah, I didn't hear him, but I heard him enough to tell him to bugger off and push him in the chest. And the suggestion is that Stephen May said, didn't you know there was still 30 seconds left in the game? I'm not sure that would have been what was said given the reaction. I don't like when the game's clearly lost like that, when a player goes and rubs salt into the wound for a player. If it's during the third quarter and you need to wake someone up, I've got no problem with any of that sort of stuff. But it wasn't a good look. I didn't think that your players going at each other when the losing moment has happened when Max Gawn's been so amazing for the day. You might have a bit of a different thought on it. What are your thoughts?
Oh, no, I loved it.
Yeah, okay.
I love the passion. I love the way Steve May just cares so much. You can have words, that's fine. They're human. And they got over it pretty quickly. They would have spoken about that after the game, and apparently they did, and it's fine. They've moved on. But I have no issue with it. I would be more concerned if they just walked off. It didn't really bother them that much. but you can see it really hurt them. They should have won that game, really. So I actually liked it.
It is amazing how players talk to each other on the field these days. Like, so I remember being...
That was the great thing about COVID. You could hear them.
Yeah, well, I'll never forget
Not that there was
being
much good about COVID.
at an international rules training camp. So it was in Sydney, and they were training at the GWS ground, and Luke Hodge gave Steve Johnson an absolute barrel as a teammate for not being in the right position, just gave it to him. And Steve Johnson just turned around and went, yep, I deserve that. Oh, my God. Like,
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he was like...
Steve J, the greatest show in town, was prepared to cop...
He copped it from Luke Hodge. They were teammates at the time. They were enemies normally, but he was standing 10 metres away from where he should have been. He was in AFL mode rather than international rules mode and wasn't guarding the right space, and Hodge gave it to him. And it was just like, yep, sweet, yep, I understand. I've stuffed that up. And it was like... I thought, surely they're going to fight back as if to say, I bugger you, you Hawthorn bastard. But no, it was like, no... You're actually right, and I'll cop it. And they just moved on. It's so different to most athletes, which we see where it wouldn't take it very well.
I bet you he still went past him later in the game after he did something special and said, what'd you pay for the ticket?
Stevie J time?
Yeah. What'd you pay for the front row seat to the Stevie J show? Jeez, I love that. Look, there was a couple of the other one I'll bring up is Jack Ginnivan. So he just can't help himself. I was really interested to see Lee Matthews really vocal about this. He said, I hated it. And I'm talking about Jack Ginnivan showing the football, as it running into an open goal. Lee Matthews said, I was actually hoping he'd drop it because he's a smart-ass act and I didn't like it. I don't mind it. I think there are certain things you can do and I don't mind that. It's a bit of theatre. I think we've got to be careful we don't coach the theatre out of players. There are certain actions I don't like. I don't like coaches, for example, spraying opposition players. I think that is just a terrible thing to do, and they deserve every whack they get for it, including a $20,000 fine, by the way. But I think whether it's players on players, I'd like to see a bit of that. And I think the Ginnivan stuff, like, you know what? He misses it, or next time they play, something might not go his way, he'll cop it back.
Yeah, I reckon it's a live by the sword, die by the sword element to it. I didn't mind the Ginnivan one compared to the Rioli one.
I didn't mind the Rioli one.
Just purely that Ginnivan's known for being a smartass.
Yeah.
So if he's going to continue being a smartass, then that's okay. Rioli isn't known for being a smartass.
No, he's not
so
really.
It was out of character for Rioli to do that. So I think if you're going to be the wag and the clown and all that stuff all the time, then it's a bit different showing the ball because that's part of the character. When it just comes randomly from nowhere, I think that's what can create all these sorts of problems, whereas Ginnivan's permanently got a target on his back and just continues to add on top of it. So if you want to be that guy all the time, then do it as much as you please, but I don't think you can just pop it out every now and then when suddenly your team's going well, whereas Ginnivan's just going to be a problem no matter what. Is going, no matter what day of the week, what round, where Hawthorn are, he's going to do that sort of stuff the entire time.
Well, right now, Cotty's playing pretty good football, so good luck to him, I say. As a proud major sponsor of the Fremantle Football Club, Woodside has accepted the challenge of supporting local footy at all levels, from grassroots to greatness, so it can thrive throughout WA. Woodside, Australia's leading energy company. Couple of MROs at the weekend. Tom Stewart, happy he got off. I was worried for him when I first saw it. But once you looked at it, and a spirited defence from the coach, Chris Scott, and from Damien Hardwick, two players who played the game on the edge, I might add. But once I'd looked at it a few times, I probably thought, he's getting off this.
I didn't see it as any different to the bump that broke Cooper Simpson's shoulder.
It's a hip.
It's a hip and shoulder with two blokes going hard, tucked in, didn't hit the head. All good. That's what good hard footy should be.
But the only point I'd make with that, it's a small margin for error.
Yes. So
anything can go wrong. A couple of millimetres either way, you've got him in the head, you're missing 4 or 5. I'm wondering whether coaches look at that and say, you're not doing that anymore.
Oh, I can see them trying to coach it out of it. But in terms of, he didn't actually hit him in the head.
No.
So hurt him as much as you want in those ways, because that's the only way you can legally hurt someone these days. I thought it was a great bump. And if you take the risk and you do it well, then congratulations. If you take the risk and do it poorly, then you deserve the consequences.
So there was no concussion. He was scanned, went to hospital for scans, and there was no internal damage. If there had been an internal damage, would he have copped any suspension?
I don't believe so, because you can bump someone as hard as you want. The ball was there. It was a legal way of contesting the ball. I thought every single element of it was just great, hard footy, and that's what we want. We want to see blokes, going hard in it. And Anderson would have expected the contact. He wouldn't have expected it to be as hard, because he got him flush.
Don't worry, Gold Coast dish it out, so that's okay.
But it was the perfect timing, the perfect bump. It's what you want to teach players on how to do it so that you can not hit someone in the head and still have an impact for your team. I thought it was great.
So what wasn't perfectly executed was Sam Durham.
Oh.
So he's copped the 2 weeks. I think he's lucky to get 2. So vulnerable player with his head down over the ball. He comes in. I thought it was crude. I think he's lucky he didn't get 3 or 4, to be quite honest.
Yeah, he deserved more. Like I compared that to what Pat Voss did to Nick Voss, which got him the 3, and it's what Connor Nash did. You know, and that got him 4. Like this had the potential to not just injure someone, it had the potential to break someone's neck.
That's right.
And it was just so reckless and so dangerous, and there was no duty of care. And you can argue as much as you want that Adam Chera didn't have the right technique for bending over and pick up a ball, but Sam Durham just had no awareness of how dangerous he was at that time and was out of control. And I barrack for us, and I would have suspended him for at least a month.
Port Adelaide GWS. What do you make of GWS?
They're very young, I think, is what we're discovering.
Some outs at the end of last year that are hurting them. Some depth, their midfield depth is not there.
Yeah, they've got a lot of class there, but they don't have a lot of experience. And it's a bit like what we've seen with Freo at times this year. Like their best is really good, their bad is really bad because their young guys are still very, very young. And this GWS team has got a lot of blokes running around who you do look at and go, who's that? And that's not, when you're looking at blokes going, who is that on the field a lot of the time because they haven't been around for a long time, you're starting to go, well, their depth isn't what we actually think it is.
One of my great games I enjoyed the most over the weekend was Adelaide-Brisbane. Adelaide had their chances. Brisbane certainly had their chances in the last quarter but squandered them. But I was really pleased Adelaide won. I thought they deserved to win the game. What I'm impressed with Adelaide, and we were asked to do our sort of mid-season reforecast, so have another look at them. And I think Adelaide's, if they can make the top 4, I think they can make the GF. They're my smoky to actually make it.
Make the GF?
Yes.
That's a big call.
I think they've got the forward line to do it in September. And we know they've got the midfield, and they've got a little bit of X factor, a lot of X factor, I should say. But what's really the key is their defence now is Keane, Worrell, etc. I think it's growing in stature every week. So I really like their balance, and I think if they don't get there, I think they can shape what it looks like at the end of the year.
Interesting finish to the game, wasn't it, with Brisbane just taking shot after shot after shot and missing them all. But, yeah, that back line really stood up really well. But, yeah, what are they, 3rd on the ladder at the moment. So, yeah, top 4 team into the grand final.
Friday night in Launceston against Hawthorn. Big game for the 4. Both teams.
I reckon he's putting the moz on Adelaide at the moment by saying they're making grand final. Yeah, I reckon you're doing I barrack for Hawthorn. I want to talk them up now so that they can get done. Then you can say your team are going amazingly.
Well, I took some happiness insurance last week and picked the dog. So, Hawthorn got up, so you can't lose. You know what I'm saying. Look, just quickly, I'll just go over it very quickly. But AFL meeting today. Ahead of a Hall of Fame induction meeting. Grand final looks likely to stay at 12:30 Melbourne time. 2:30 Melbourne time, 12:30 our time. Are you happy with that? The broadcasters aren't. I can tell you that. I think it'll change. I'm not surprised they've stuck with it for this year, but I think it will change. Go to a twilight.
What time would your preference be?
Oh, I think 4:30.
Okay, so the game finishes then around 7:30.
Yeah, and you get
30, isn't it? Yeah,
you get that, and I don't. I come from a traditional Victorian background where the day was set out beautifully. You go to breakfast on the Yarra, you go to your North Melbourne breakfast, you go to the under-19s, the reserves, you go through the whole thing. It was a great day, but I think times have changed, and I think the broadcasters spend too much money on funding the game that they should have more say in what happens. And I think. Having seen a few NRL grand finals, it really works. I like the entertainment around it. I know it's about the game itself. I disagree with you because you think that you think the skill level is definitely depleted in a night game.
Yeah.
I think it's marginal.
Yeah, I still like the 2:30 start. I'd go back to the Jack Rewalt moment, the Mr. Brightside post grand final, and I'd bring back that.
Don't take us back there, Cobb. What have you taken us back there for?
I'd take us back to the concert being after the game and then having the team on stage singing with the band at the time. And I think that could be the AFL iconic moment. That could be the thing where you choose someone to go out and sing on stage with them, and that'll be like, when you win the Super Bowl, I'm going to Disneyland sort of scenario, and that could become a real tradition. I don't like the idea of moving the game back. I could cop 4:30. I couldn't cop nights. I
think twilight's the game.
Yeah, I worry about kids not being able to watch games if it's a night game.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what it would look like late in the day. But I love the I love the tradition of a 2:30 grand final. I think it's something that's just very, very Aussie, very, very AFL, and we've seen a couple of them now. We saw the Twilight Grand Final here, and we saw the Night Grand Final in Queensland. I still love the day.
A couple other things. So Tassie has obviously been top of the agenda. We're not sure where it's going at the moment. All I'll say is, if you don't want to team Tassie, we'll cut the apron strings. You can drift off, and we will never see you again, because don't waste your chance here. But so the AFL said it's sticking fat on a roof. It's sticking fat on the timing of it all. Once again, I'll say there should be more flexibility. Don't have a roof. Go up to about 28,000 people. I think you have a few more capacity at that stadium.
I know this much. It was 4 degrees in Canberra the other night,
all right, mate.
And people didn't look like they were enjoying it that much. Tassie needs a roof. Yeah, they're kidding themselves if they think they can go without a roof.
There's also just an update on no real update on the illicit drugs policy. We know the AFL wants more punitive measures in, which I think they'll get eventually. They're in discussions with the AFL Players Association about that, so we'll see where that goes.
Don't take drugs, kids. Take drugs.
Do not take drugs. The soft cap was the other one. There is an increase in the soft cap, so you'll be able to have, I think it was 700,000 in the first year, just off the top of my head. But I think importantly, there is going to be some funding for a support network for coaches, which I think is very important. So that's a big tick. The other news today was 2 more years for Luke Beveridge.
Yes, he's well and truly earned that. It's amazing to think they're outside the 8 right now, but
I can't believe they are outside the 8, given the run they've had. They've been one of the more impressive teams this year. They weren't so good against Hawthorn, but I think coming off the bye might have hurt them too.
Possibly, but he's a very good coach. He gets himself lost at different points by trying too many things, I think, and that's what's probably happened in recent weeks.
He's the most passionate of the coaches.
Yeah.
He plays with that passion and edge.
I'd like to see him get back to putting blokes in their best positions the entire time, and think that will lift them back up the ladder. He's doing a bit of experimenting.
So Lob, you're okay with Lob?
Lob's
is he back or forward?
Lob worked when they moved him back, but he's very big on just trying things every now and then for no real clear reason to us, and then that can cost them games sometimes. But he's won a grand final, made another grand final. He's the longest serving coach in Bulldogs history and a premiership coach, so he's earned his chance to keep coaching for a couple of years.
I'm happy they've done that. I like it. So good luck to him. Part of me hopes they get there in September, because they will add something, won't they, the Western Bulldogs. Cod, favourite time of the week, the Thirsty Camel mailbag. This week's special, Hans Super Dry, 3.5 24 pack. Bottles only $52.99 a carton. We'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher. As always, thanks to Thirsty Camel. Get your questions into TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email, as we'll send you a digital voucher if you are a weekly winner. Cod, I love this first question, as I know you will. This one from Jamie from Success. The Scott brothers reached the 1,000 combined game tally as players and coaches this weekend. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
Fittingly, they actually coach against each other. So it's
amazing.
It's a great thing. Can you think of another brother combination that has had as much impact on the competition?
I'll start with the Danahers.
Yeah.
I reckon they've done pretty well, the Danahers, when you got Neil, who's done what he did as a captain of Essendon into an assistant coach at Essendon, and Fremantle into coach at Melbourne, and now what he's doing with Freeze MND. He's just an inspiration, along with
well done on Big Freeze 11 too. Everyone go out. The beanies are still in Coles. Go and get one.
And then you got Terry, captain Essendon, to a couple of flags. Tony as a fullback at Essendon, and Chris as a premiership player as well. So the 4 of them played in the game together in
September 1, 1990.
Yep. So that's an iconic family. Then you got the Selwoods, who have been through so much tragedy at the moment, but just another iconic family as well. You could reel a few off as well, couldn't you?
Well, I've got a few here. Dacos, obviously, Josh and Nick plus Peter. I'm going to go, I'll work it down. I'll work it up to the probably the most famous. Gary, Jeff and Kevin Ablett, Chad and Kane Corns, Bruce and Ian Nankervis, Andrew and Darren Jarman. Boy, those two could play. Here's the top of my list. Gordon and Sid Coventry. So Gordon, 1,299 goals for Collingwood. Sid, 1927 Brownlow medalist, captain 4 straight flags. So a few achievements there from those two. Peter and Sean Burgoyne. So Peter, of course, played in the Port's 2004 flag. His son's now playing with Port Adelaide. And Sean, of course, a teammate in that flag, and then went on to play another 3 for Hawthorn. Albert and Harry Collier. Albert Collingwood and Fitzroy. Harry Collingwood, the only two brothers to both win Brownlows and were teammates in 6 Collingwood flags. And you're going to love this one, Justin and Simon Madden. So Justin, of course, Essendon Carlton, 332 games and 2 flags, and Simon, 378 games, 2 flags for Essendon. As much as I disliked Essendon in those days of rivalry with Hawthorn, I admired him. He was one of the greatest ruckmen I've ever seen, Simon.
Yeah, I can think of other names like the Shaws.
Take a hang too.
The Shaw family, an amazing family.
The Shaw family. And offspring.
Yeah, the offspring they've had as well. The Ashcrofts are building.
Aren't they?
Already building it, looking like they're going to be an amazing family. And then you look at people like the Gales, Benny Gale and Michael Gale. They were around as well, and you can just keep on going through.
And why I like the
Silvani's.
I like the father-son, even though they need to pay more for the premium of top picks. I really like the father-son because you can get the brothers playing together. They're great storylines.
Yeah, I think it'd be a tragedy if they lost the father-son. They just need to make them pay the right amount of money or the right amount of points as it is now to make sure that they get the right players in.
Now, speaking of the Dacosses, this is from Donnie the Unhappy D. What was the point tagging Nick Dacos on Monday? The D's lost and Ed Langdon got 4 disposals and Dacos did have an impact in the final quarter. Well, the point I'd make is, you're right, but the point I'd make is Oliver kicks the goal, Gawn kicks the goal, Fritsch sort of handballs over the top or kicks the goal, you win.
Yeah,
and it's a genius move.
You're in the game.
And it's what a move, putting Ed Langdon on Nick Dacos. So I think you've got to be careful what you wish for. I thought it was a good move. They got close. They lost by a point.
You know, Langdon can run the entire game no matter what. Tagging Nick Dacos is important. And if you're still in the game because you've closed him down, you've done a good job.
Here's a left field one from Bruce from Alfred Cove. Is the AFL the only code in the world that gives the away team such a warm welcome at a travelling fixture? How's this for an idea? For a one-off huge game, the home club finds a way to simply refuse to play the travelling club's anthem as they enter the arena. Throw them off their game and create a hostile environment from the word go. Cop the fine from League HQ. What do you reckon? You know the best game with that, I reckon, if it was Port v Collingwood, don't play, and then run out with the prison bar jumper on, and then after about 5 minutes, only kidding, we'll revert. You could do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. So I was at the Denver Nuggets.
Yep.
When the Perth Wildcats played there, and the Wildcats were in the genuine away rooms there. So you as the journos can go into the home team rooms before, or both teams' rooms before the game to speak to players, and it is just palatial in the Denver rooms. It's just got lights everywhere, and these amazing armchairs, and everyone's got their own locker, and there's TVs all over. You walk into the away rooms, and it looked like a suburban footy room. It was just wooden bench, wooden locker that was wide open, just enough room for a hanger, nothing else. And I was like, I was expecting it to be, oh, here we go, this will be nice and palatial as well. No, you got the amazing rooms for the home team and just crap for everybody else. And it's a multi-million-dollar, every player's earning so much money. But no, it's we do make life quite nice for the away teams.
We're too nice.
No doubt about it.
They'll tell you about the old days. I'm sure it was the same at Waffle Grounds, but certainly in the VFL, you go to Victoria Park, you go to Glen Ferry Oval, you're getting cold showers.
Yep.
And I suppose that's the way it should be.
Oh, no problem with that. If it's the same for everyone, it's a bit different. But yeah, it's amazing the difference between home and away footy and home and away elsewhere in other sports.
We have been brought to you by Tab Touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. And remember, you can watch or listen, Cod, to this podcast on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thanks once again, Cod, for joining us on a Tuesday.
Always a pleasure, Quarter. See you next week.
Look forward to talking to you next week.